The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned into the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Rob Waltko and Joe Youngblood. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Hey, wrestling fans, Joe Youngblood here with my co-host,
Rob Waltko.
And we want to welcome you to this week's installment of The Open Room. As we talked about in the last podcast, we're previewing all the teams in order of their finished NCAAs for this upcoming season. And nothing better than talking about wrestling in July. But before we get into Lock Haven's preview and the Pitt preview, there were some things that we need to, talk about that we were based upon our research and everything we knew. There's a few things that changed. One was the Lehigh lineup, and these were both these stories were things that Rob broke between he and I. And I'm going to defer to him now about the Lehigh lineup and let him explain that. And we got another quote unquote bombshell coming your way, but we'll start with Lehigh first. So Rob, tell us about what you heard in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so a former Lehigh All-American who will remain nameless. Someone that has never taken me down. I had to beat them into submission into giving me this news. And apparently Gordon Wolf will be down at 157. And it looks like Cole Walters will be the man at 65. I guess Ian Brown, unfortunately, has suffered a career-ending or at least a season-ending injury, so he'll be out. And then I heard from another unnamed source that Bo Nickal indeed will be 197, which when you think about it makes sense that Kassar is going up to heavyweight. Him quote-unquote running or trying to get away from Rashid didn't make as much sense. But if Nickal is indeed going up, like I'm hearing, it makes sense for Kassar to go up to heavyweight for sure. So
if I may, with the Lehigh lineup now with this change, I don't think I'm going to waver on my original prediction. I'm going to stay pat with what I had from the original one. But I have to say, with Bo Nickal going to 97, we kind of talked about it. I think I was back and forth a little bit, but ultimately I think the move here for the team, might be Bo at 84. I know you said it makes sense, but I don't know. I think Rashid, Nickal at 84 gives them a legit shot to have national champs at both weight classes. Because if and again, these are ifs. If Valencia goes to 84, and that's not confirmed yet, Rashid's not beating Valencia. That's my opinion. I know, Rob, you think it makes sense. I just think the move here for the team is Bo at 84. But again, No,
I meant it makes sense that Kassar is going to heavyweight, because at first it's why would he bump up? Does he not think he could beat Rashid? But since Nickal's going up, it's okay, he's not beating Nickal. That's why he would go to heavyweight.
Okay. So, and that's something that we can debate. And again, if you listeners out there have any questions or, comments, or you want to rip us new ones for anything, you can find us on Twitter and definitely fire off a few questions. And just if there's something coming up on a podcast you want to ask about, or something that we've talked about, as always, don't hesitate to bring that up. So let's roll into Lock Haven here. And, I'm just going to give a little recap of their seasons past year. Had a lot of success. They're on the rise, and that's part of their spiel there with Coach Moore, Coach Carr at Lock Haven. And, recap their season, talk about the projected lineup, and ultimately we'll finish up with some predictions. So Lock Haven's coming off a season where they were EWL champs, and they had, as a team, they had 3 individual champs and 6 NCAA qualifiers. Their most, I believe, since 2006. And, it was, all intents and purposes, a very good season for this Lock Haven team that, as in their mantra, they are on the rise. They finished 16th at NCAAs, and just like Lehigh, they were I think a half point behind Lehigh, which put them 8 points out of 10th place. So with 2 All-Americans, which I'll get to, they did a pretty admirable job scoring points. As far as getting getting guys to win matches. And, talk about some of those guys that won matches in a little bit. Like I said, they had 2 All-Americans. Ronnie Perry's a runner-up at 149 pounds. He lost to the Zane Train in the final. And, Rob, I don't know about you, and give you, a chance to debate this. Really, that was getting to the final at 149 was it's one of those situations where you knew who was going to win it. So getting there was essentially like being, in a sense, on some level, a champ in itself. To get there, to have the right to face Zane, but you kind of knew what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I would have been absolutely shocked if Perry was able to pull that off. But, man, what a tournament he put together. Just upset after upset. He looked fantastic. And, he wrestled Zane tough. He almost had that takedown at the end of the second. He was in the match, so certainly he has nothing to be ashamed of.
No, again, we said it last week, and anyone that's watched wrestling, you have to get hot at the right time, and it's exactly what he did. He won the EWL for a second year in a row, and he goes on this run at NCAA's, and it was just it was fun to watch. Seeing that 15 seed next to his name in not just the quarters, but then again the semis, and being Klodzik in the semis and getting to the finals. Seeing the 1 versus 15, it's what it's about, seeing those upsets and seeing those guys, the coming out party. Unfortunately for Ronnie Perry, his coming out party happened as a senior, and but it was a great way to cap his career. In-state guy, Solenko kid, teammates with Haynes in high school. So that was their runner-up at 149 pounds. Chance Marsteller didn't fulfill his prophecy per se, but finished 4th at NCAA's, had a great tournament. Was 5th ranked in the country throughout the season. I believe he was the 5 seed in the tournament, so he did out wrestle his seed, and had he ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw with Isaiah Martinez, in the tournament, and Evan Wick, who, again, another guy who had a tremendous tournament. Those are his only 2 losses, and talk a little bit more about his season overall in the projected lineup. They're 12-4 in the season in dual meets, and their highlight win was a win over a number 11 Rutgers team, a tough Rutgers team. Again, we talk about teams on the rise, and when Rutgers made the move to the Big Ten, Rob, I didn't think that that they'd ever be able to compete on that stage, and I'm eating crow on that one. I don't know what your thoughts were on Rutgers when they made that move to Big Ten, but it's kind of fun to see the what they've been able to do since making that move.
Yeah, they were. I think when I was maybe a freshman or sophomore in college, they had maybe the number 1 recruiting class in the country. They had Scott Winston was kind of leading the charge, but they literally got no All-Americans out of it, which was a big disappointment. A lot of people basically thought they were never going to get it done. But since Ashnault really punched through, they've been getting better ever since, and they're a tough program. I think expectations for them to be a perennial top 10 team, a team that possibly gets a trophy at some point, that would not surprise me if they get the right recruiting class. The right class of New Jersey kids come up at the right time, and they land them. The sky is somewhat of the limit for those guys.
Yeah. And, capping off the recap, the Lock Haven finished 21 in the dual meet rankings, 16 in the tournament, NCAA tournament. So again, they had a great season. And again, we talked about Penn State last week. We talked about Lehigh, and I made the comment about these schools that have to compete against these Power 5 schools. And they're tiny. They don't have the same resources. Like Lock Haven is even, has even less resources than Lehigh. And, look what they're able to do. Look at the schools they finish ahead of, first comes to mind, my alma mater, West Virginia, they're finished ahead of a Big 12 school. It's a testament to what the program does. And they're doing it with a lot of in-state kids, which is just phenomenal to see. And, the amount of success they're able to pull out of these kids and develop this talent is what it's about. Like Ronnie Perry wasn't a blue chip recruit coming out of high school and goes to Lock Haven and bides his time and works hard and buys into what his coaches are selling, and he's a national finalist, runner up. and like you said, gave the Zane train, gave him some trouble. Didn't go out there and roll over for him. That was for sure.
Yeah, I think, and I know this is a Pennsylvania show, and we're a couple of homers, but I think that could only be done in Pennsylvania. Like if, Iowa had a fifth school, or if Iowa put 3 teams in the top 15, top 20, with Iowa State, Northern Iowa, like it would be a little bit surprising, especially if it was a school the size of Lock Haven. But like what those coaches do, Moore and company, they're pretty tremendous.
All right, so let's talk about projected lineup for Lock Haven. 25, I believe it's going to be Luke Warner. He's going to be a sophomore next year. He was 24-13 as a freshman. He took 4 EWLs, did not qualify for NCAAs. He's a Bethlehem kid. He's one of those grinder kids. He's solid on top and fun to watch. Again, had a very solid freshman year. As far as something to build on, and like I just said, like Lock Haven's not pulling the blue chip recruits, and that's nothing that they should be ashamed of, because what they're doing is they're getting guys that have high ceilings, and they're developing them into really solid, impressive wrestlers by the time they're done. You're not going to see the 4-time national champs. You might not even see many 4-time All-Americans come out of this program, but you're going to see a lot of quality wrestlers. I'll talk a little bit about each individual that projects to be a starter, and then at the end we'll talk about where I believe they'll finish and how their season will go. 133, again, starting for another year, DJ Fellman. He's going to be a redshirt junior. He was 25-16 last year, another 4th place finish at the EWL tournament. And, another guy, just a solid wrestler on that Lock Haven squad that, again, put the time in. And, Rob, you can attest to it. It's not easy to win 20-plus matches at Division I level, is it?
No, I mean, unless you've done it, I mean, these guys are really, really tough, gritty guys. These guys that are qualifying for the national tournament, they're very, very good wrestlers. So, Lock Haven's littered with those guys right now. And I was actually talking to my brother about that today, not to go too far off the reservation, but we were talking about Bloomsburg back in the day when Stutzman coached them. And we went to the Navy Classic when I was at Bucknell, and these guys were just so physical and mean and aggressive. And I was like, that is Division I wrestling. And those guys aren't even like ranked high, and they're just tough. Like, this is what this is. And that's kind of, like these tough 20-match winners from Lock Haven. It kind of reminds me of that. Again,
it's about the we talk about the process with a lot of these smaller programs and how they have to, they get these guys that maybe aren't coveted by the big schools, and that are just going to come in and work their tails off to be the best they possibly can. And, you got coaches like, Coach Moore and Carr that are selling a good product, and these kids are buying in. We move on to 141. We got Kyle Shoup. He's a redshirt junior this year. He's coming off a sophomore season, which he went 36-14. He was 3rd in EWL, and he qualified for NCAAs and went 1-2 there. And, had a pretty good, he did have a good season, and he's definitely a guy that's, as a senior, going to look to come back and improve upon what he did. Another Pennsylvania guy, 149. We got Colin Glorioso. He's a redshirt sophomore. He's the only non-returning. Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. He's the first of possibly 2 non-returning starters in the lineup, and he's replacing Ronnie Perry. He's got big shoes to fill. He's 12-6 last year as redshirt freshman, in backup duties and wrestling opens. So that was his role last year at the team. I don't know how he's going to handle stepping into the lineup. I don't think he's stepping in and there's going to be there'll be no pressure on him to emulate or replicate the kind of season that Ronnie Perry just put out, but it's going to be his time to shine, his time to show the growth he's had in his college career so far, and make a name for himself. So Rob, anything you want to add about those first 4 guys that I brought up?
No, they're solid. I mean, 49. I know that Brockport was a pretty highly touted recruit, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the mix to start. You look at like Shoup, Fellman, Klein. Like Shoup should qualify, and then one of those other guys. I mean, they certainly could get to the dance. So. Again, like you said, it's not murderer's row, but it's definitely a solid group, solid 4 to start your lineup.
And let's, being realistic, they're going to be a tough dual meet team. And like I said, I don't want to get ahead of it too much, but I do want to say my prediction where I believe that'll fall when time is right later in my preview. 157 incumbent. Redshirt junior this year, Alex Clucker. He was 25-11 last year. He was an EWL champion for Lock Haven, and he was NCAA qualifier. He went 0-2 when he got there. And, he's a guy that as a freshman went 16-17, did not compete as a redshirt freshman. I'm sorry, was 16-17, did not compete as a freshman. He was 25-11 last year. So, he comes off taking almost a year off and then comes back and wins 25 matches. That's, pretty impressive. And, at NCAAs, he wrestled John Van Brill from Rutgers, lost. And then you had the misfortune of getting Joey LaValle, the number 2 seed, in that bracket, who lost to Kennedy Monday in the first round. And, he ended up going 0-2 at the NCAA tournament. But, he had big wins last year. He beat Brian Clagan from Ryder, in the EWL final. And, he beat Freddie Stroker from Cornell. He had some, some real tough scraps he was in that he did a nice job, winning. And, I'm really high on him coming back and, having a not a bounce back season, but building upon what he did last year as a redshirt junior and, making that level change to someone that's, going to push to get to that round of 12 we talk about. And, as we talked about last week, Rob, that round 12, when you get there, anything can happen. Yeah.
I mean, that's the round of 12 is, you get there, you can All-American, right? Like, that's people are probably rolling their eyes, but you get there, anything can happen. I mean, you could face the guy that's the last seed that pulled an upset, and you quote unquote lucked into facing him, or you could face the first seed who got upset. So, half the All-Americans every year wrestle in the round of 12. So it's definitely a round where a lot of crazy things happen.
And then we go to 65. Got Chance Marsteller. He's going to be a senior next year. It's kind of weird to think that he's a senior already, Rob, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it kind of flew by, huh?
Yeah, again, it was a huge I would say I am a huge fan of him. And, things didn't go his way, and he battled some demons, and I think that makes me respect him more, that, he hit rock bottom. He had his issues. He paid his dues, and he's making right on it. And maturity is the ultimate equalizer when it comes to something like that. And hats off to Coach Moore and his staff for giving him that second chance. Things didn't work at Oklahoma State. He got to Lock Haven, fresh start. Things happen. We all know the story. We're not going to rehatch it. But he said, he paid his dues and he did what he had to do to get back. And he's making the most of it. And wrestling aside, he's a success story in my opinion, because I think there were almost like unreachable expectations thrust upon him based upon his high school career. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Rob.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of pressure that he was under. I thought it was pretty sad when people were basically turning their back on him or cheering against them. Like, listen, I don't lose sleep over what he does in his life, but certainly you don't want to see a guy like that just completely ruin his life. So glad that he got his together. I think Coach Moore, I watched an interview where he said he had a kid, so hopefully he's matured and everything's behind him, and he can go out his senior year on a bang and then, enter the real world as a functioning adult.
Yeah. Chance last year, like I said, 45-4. One of the things I noticed, Rob, and you're closer to the game. It seems like Lock Haven wrestles a lot more matches than some of the other schools. Do you not wonder why? But do you perhaps you shed some light on that?
I don't have the slightest clue. I'm looking over their schedule right now. I'm looking at Marsteller wrestled 49 matches, and Shoop wrestled 50 matches, and some of the guys wrestled a lot. Yeah, their schedule, they seem to wrestle in a lot of tournaments. So they wrestled the Scuffle, the PSAX, the Black Knight Invitational, the Journeyman, that's team duels, and the Clarion Open on top of their dual schedule. Yeah, for whatever reason, it seems like they put a lot of matches out there, just the way their schedule was, I guess. So let me ask you a question, Rob. What is your opinion on wrestling? So we'll use Marsteller. He wrestled 4 matches at NCAA's, I believe. Let me look back. I take that back. No, I'm sorry. He wrestled 6. I was wrong. So, he wrestled 49 matches on the year. So you figured he had 43 matches wrestled before he got to NCAA's. Is that a lot, in your opinion? Is that too much? Yeah, it is. And with the way that the qualifiers are built, I don't think you're penalized for losses. So maybe that's intentional, where they're like, listen, we're going to get as many matches as possible. The more chances we get to have wins over other qualifiers or other quality guys, the better our RPI is. Maybe that's the logic behind it. Now, looking at it from this standpoint, or I'm gonna look at it from the coaching standpoint. In my opinion, is that's a lot of weigh-ins in a lot of cases. It's a lot of times that you're having to make weight, and not that I'm opposed to that. But I just feel like, when you're at that level and you got guys that maybe are not cutting weight the right way or managing their weight. And I don't want to use the word cutting because that's looked down upon, not managing their weight properly. That's a lot of times they got to step on the scale and do that. So, I don't know. Again, I'm just the guy with the microphone. You and I it's what we are, as guys with microphones that have a platform to talk. I just feel like I would want to keep, temper it a little bit, not try to keep as many times off the scale or maximize the competitions for the amount of times you're stepping on that scale. Yeah, I'd love to get Coach Moore on to talk about that. I mean, I'd have to look at their schedule a little bit closer, but with all those tournaments, maybe it is one way in besides the Scuffle. A guy like Marsteller, maybe he needed the matches just to shake the rust off because he's been pretty inactive. But you're right, the rest of the team, I mean, they seem to wrestle a lot. Yeah, I'm just, you do the research and you start looking at all these teams and some of those records jump off the paper at you. And you're like, and you just wonder. So, moving on to 174. 174 would probably be another one that's a possibly contested weight class as far as who the starter might be. Last year's starter was Jared Segrist for Lock Haven, and he was 26-19 and did not place took fourth at the EWL. But interestingly enough, Lock Haven received a transfer this offseason, Austin Bell from the University of Pittsburgh. And Rob, I think you agree with me. We think Bell might be the guy here at 174 for this year. Yeah, I certainly think he thinks so. That's why he transferred there. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call him a blue chip, but he was a pretty big recruit coming out of high school. I think he's an Ironman champ, was in the hunt for a couple PA state titles. He had Labriola and Nino Bonacorsi in his way as a senior, so really tough weight classes. But, I mean, that kid, he went into Pitt with some pretty high expectations, so maybe not the national headlines like Marsteller, but a possible redemption story at Lock Haven. Yeah, and again, that's kind of like a little understory there at Lock Haven. You got Marsteller,
You got, and we'll talk about Thomas Haynes a little bit. It's their second stop, and where they're having their success at that second stop. So Austin Bell was 6-14 last year as a backup at Pitt. Doesn't jump off the screen at you as far as knocks your socks off. But the other thing that kind of, I don't know, makes you think, like, Seager still has a redshirt year. Could be a good time for him to utilize that, and then come back as a senior. Again, you don't. I feel like he's going to be starter there. You don't transfer somewhere to improve to not start or to not have a better situation. So I don't know. I'm going to go on a hunch here. I'm going to project Bell to be the starter at 74 for this, and he'll be a junior eligibility wise for the Bald Eagles. 184 is Corey Hazel. He's going to be a redshirt junior. He was 24-10 last season. He was an EWL champion, an NCAA qualifier, and he went 1-2 at the NCAA tournament. Hazel is a guy that wrestled 34 matches, not as many as the other guys, but he's back-to-back years of 24-plus wins, that he's put up. So he's had some success. You look at some of his matches, his win at NCAAs, he beat the 9-seed Bryce Carr. And then the second round NCAAs, he wrestles the 3-seed Dominic Albinader from Michigan and loses 11-10. So it was a match he was in. It was a scrap he was in. And, it didn't go in his favor. But, he wrestled Max Dean tough last year, 5-2. And, he's a win over Drew Phipps. You looked on the list at some of the guys that he's wrestled and beat. He's got several wins over Great Bullsack from Clarion, and he gets the matches. He just hasn't, has maybe not put it all together. So he's looking at this year being his junior year. This will be one of those guys like that is making those steps to change that level and take it to that next level. So what are your thoughts on that one, Rob?
Yeah, I watched the coverage of Lock Haven that Flow Wrestling put out, and I think it was Carr mentioned. He's like, this kid's good. He's athletic. He's really good. So I think he's a guy that they're hoping could be the next Ronnie Perry. Yeah.
So again, like the expectations are there, not just probably his own, but this is what the staff is expecting from him. So we move on to 197 and Tristan Sponseller for Lock Haven, and he's going to be redshirt senior this year. He was 13-15 last year. He was third at the EWL tournament, and he missed almost 2 months of the season due to injury. And say 13-15, not the great record, but is it for a junior? As a sophomore, he went 32-7. And, he was 21-15 as a freshman, redshirt freshman. He was 23-9 as his true freshman year. So, he's got 89 wins under his belt. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. And, he missed, like I said, a ton of time. The last time he wrestled was January 12th, and then he didn't wrestle again until the EWL Championships, the first round. And that's not going to be a recipe for success as far as, being able to come out and compete. Like it's not easy. You make the comment about Marsteller wrestling on the matches, knock the rust off. You're in the mid-season. You don't wrestle for almost 2 full months and come out in your conference tournament and trying to punch that ticket to NCAAs. It's tough, and I think you'll agree, Rob.
Yeah, that's not an easy feat.
Now, and last season he had some success. He lost to Kassar 13-10, in the scuffle, and he lost 8-7 to Chris Wheeler from Lehigh, and he wrestled Jake Jacobson from Lehigh, lost 6-2. Two guys we talked about that are as tough as a 97-pounder you're gonna see, and but like I said, 32-7. As a sophomore, did not qualify for NCAAs, but still 32 wins at that level is 32 wins anyway you cut it. So that's the guy at 197. If we look at heavyweight, you have another incumbent, Thomas Haynes. He's going to be a redshirt junior. Thomas Haynes, everyone knows, that's a PA fan, 4-time state champ from Solenko, and again hasn't had the same success at this next level that he did at the high school level, and it's definite. It's not easy. Like, just because you have success in one realm does not guarantee success at another. And Haynes, again, another redemption story, went to Ohio State. I think we kind of all know the story. He was going to be the guy at heavyweight, and there was some guy that decided to go to heavyweight. I forget his name. I don't know.
Schneider.
Yeah, I don't know. Some guy that won like an Olympic gold medal or
German
something.
Guy.
Kind of left no room for Haynes, so he decided to transfer back somewhere closer to home. And last year he was a NCAA qualifier. He was second at the EWL tournament. He finished the season 21-7, and I went, like I said, 2-2 at NCAA's. Subsequently, his season was ended with a loss to Jordan Wood in the consolation quarterfinal. Second round of consolations. And a loss that Jordan Wood avenged from state finals match back when they were in high school. So again, Haynes, is another guy that he was a blue chipper, but you look at the blue chippers that they have, they didn't get them first shot around. They got them on the second time around. And Thomas Haynes is a guy that they believe at Lock Haven is All-American potential. And we talked last week that heavyweight weight class is kind of wide open, Rob. We talked about the potential of Neville's being the preseason number one. I believe heavyweight is really, it's going to be a crapshoot when it comes down to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that haven't reached the podium that could be in the finals or could be in the semis. It's kind of how I look at it, which makes it interesting. There's going to be some new faces. I think Haynes, he's a guy that they're probably counting on getting on the podium. I think that would be a nice end to his career.
Yeah, so totally agree. Looking at the outlook and predictions for this season, I'm going to keep this short and to the point. I'll get Rob an opportunity to agree, disagree, or be indifferent on what I have to say. But I think this Lock Haven team has all the makings to be another solid dual meet team. They're going to be a team that will have an opportunity to, with their schedule, to wrestle some tougher teams and maybe even shock them or give them a good run. I think when the smoke clears, they're 21 this year, and as a dual meet team, when the dust settled, I'm going to say they're going to be top 16 this year, and I don't know, something about saying top 15 it seems like way too risky. So I'm going to say top 16 because I just feel like it feels a little safer. I think 16 is somewhere in around where they're going to be. I think they're going to build upon last year and be a better dual meet team than they were this past year. And the NCAA finish, so they were 16th last year. Again, I don't want to come off as being conservative in this, but NCAA tournament, it's tough. Points are hard to come by. So to think that this group has what it takes to be much more than a top 15 team, I don't know if they can do it right now. I'm really curious about some of these guys and the next step that they potentially could take coming out of this Lock Haven wrestling room. So I'm going to say top 15 in NCAA's. That's as bold as I'm going to go. I'm going to say 7, possibly 8 NCAA qualifiers off this team, and I'm going to say 4 All-Americans out of this group. Get 4 All-Americans out of this group. I'm going to say Marsteller and Haynes are going to be All-Americans, and then I'm going to say 2 of the following 3 have the definite potential to be All-Americans, and one's kind of like a crapshoot, and I'll talk about that. But I'm going to say Kyle Shoup has opportunities. Been to NCAA's, he won't be intimidated by being there. Actually, I'll say 2 of the next 4 between Shoup, Clucker, Hazel, and Sponseller. Sponseller is kind of the wild card, but I think if he's completely healthy, last year he just didn't was hurt. He's shown the ability to compete at that level. I think he'll be in that round of 12. So I'm going to say 4 All-Americans out of this group, and I think that's a little bit on the bold side. And I think, Rob, you may disagree with that based upon your response there a second ago. I think that as far as NCAA qualifiers go, I think you're going to like Luke Warner's going to be in the conversation, DJ Philman's going to be in the conversation to qualify. I said Shoop, that's 3, Clucker's 4, Marsteller's 5, Hazel 6, Sponseller, and Haynes. There's 8 right there, and that's not even including Austin Bell in that conversation. Because again, I don't know. I need to see I need the eye test on that one. So
yeah, I'll put my over under at 2.5. I say Haynes and Marsteller, and then if the public wants to bet on another guy, I'm not going to blame them, but I'll set 2.5 as my line. Before we go over to Pitt, these guys, I mean, we're kind of talking about them as like transfer central, but they have 3 Pennsylvania state champs: McGonigal, Clymer, and Reed redshirting. So they're looking to reload. Like that momentum they're getting, it's going to turn over in recruiting, and they might not need the blue chip recruits anymore to come in via transfer. They might be able to go out and get them themselves.
No, and then you Cole Manley's there too, just transferred from Virginia Tech. That's another guy that was not a I want to say a blue chipper, but definitely guy was tough as nails.
He was stud in high school.
Yeah, and so there's talent in that room, day in and day out. I mean, there's probably this year just going to be just bloodbaths in there on a regular basis, and guys just going at each other, and it's going to be like I said, it's gonna be fun to watch. Like this, it's easy to get behind a Penn State because they're Penn State right now. They're just winners, and they got a lot of personality, and Cale Sanderson is not very charismatic, but like you kind of hang on his every word. Scott Moore's a pretty charismatic guy. You can tell he's very passionate when he talks about his program. His assistant coaches have the same mindset. And, that team just seems like they're loose all the time. They don't go out there. They're not tight. They don't have to be. They just go out and they just do their thing.
Man, if I was as good as Penn State, I'd be pretty loose too.
So, but that's what we got for Lock Haven. Always, like I said, looking for some feedback. We're going to refer to Rob right now. We're going to go and talk a little bit about the Pitt Panthers. As I've stated before, when it comes to this, I did double check with Rob this week to make sure he wasn't sticking me with doing Pitt. I said and I joked, and you'll hear when we talk with Keith Gavin in our interview and later in the episode that I'm tried and true West Virginia grad. So talking about Pitt, I'm going to be as objective as humanly possible when I give my predictions and opinions on this. So, Rob, you take over and, time to run the show and tell us about the Pitt Panthers.
Yeah, so I'm a hometown guy, born and raised in Western Pennsylvania. So Pitt's a team that I've always followed and cheered for. We got the chance to talk to Keith Gavin, like I mentioned before, and he talks a little bit about some of these guys. But, Pitt's lineup is very, very young. Last year they actually forfeited a few times at 125, and they went out and took care of that problem pretty quick. They got Lewis Newell, multiple-time Pennsylvania runner-up. Brandon Fenton was a late signee. He's a multiple-time Ohio State champ, nationally ranked kid. And then coming in as a verbal, who's a senior this year, is Ryan Sullivan, state champ from Shaler. So they're going to be pretty set at 125 for the next few years. This year, obviously, I think it's down to Fenton and Newell. I have no idea who wins out of those two, but I would assume one of those two end up being the starter. So young at that weight, but they have some pedigree, some good guys, so you would expect them to hold their own, that's for sure. 133, a guy everyone's excited about, Mickey Philippi. He's finally stepping on the mat. Really, really tough kid, really well-liked. Keith talks about him a little bit and his work ethic. Mick had a really good year. He lost 3 times, twice to Del Vecchio from Rutgers. He ended up beating Corbin Myers, Ben Thornton, Dylan Duncan, all those guys at the Midlands. So, he's shown the ability to beat maybe not the All-American type guys, but those guys that are in the top 15, top 20, and I expect that his stock will only rise throughout the year. 141, LJ Bentley. He's a former national qualifier. I think he was having some weight issues at 125 and jumped all the way to 41. He'll be a senior, hoping to go out with a bang and keep that St. Ed's All-American streak running because he is a St. Ed's grad. And, we'll see how he does. He's at a full feed and not cutting as much weight this year. Joe, thoughts on the first three weights?
Well, if it holds true and either Fenton or Nickal is the starter at 125, there's going to be some growing pains there. I mean, flat out. Pitt doesn't wrestle a soft schedule. The ACC, as we talked about with, here when we talked about in the interview with Coach Gavin, the ACC isn't what it used to be. And it's definitely on the up. And again, it's not the Big Ten, but it's, I don't know, maybe the next best thing to the Big Ten. The Big 12 is a little bit in flux right now. So it's right. It might be the next best conference. And, they're going to see tough duels. They're going to see tough competition tournaments. So whoever it is, Fenton or Nickal, it's going to be, it's going to be a year of learning for them. Moving to 33, Mickey Philippi. Again, glad that things are going right for him. Behind him is KJ Fenstermacher, another PA guy.
I think Fenstermacher's no longer with Pitt, from what I understand.
Take that back then. Philippi not having him behind, pushing him. Philippi is, a guy that, again, had some troubles and is getting back on the mat and things are going right for him. I'm hoping it keeps trending that way for him. And he continues to see success that he had earlier on. In the last year, he was 17-3 at the time that he got hurt, like you said, at Midlands, and so he had a lot of competition. And he was 25-8 as a freshman at 133 pounds. So he is some of the matches that he's been in a lot of scraps, as they say. And lost some tough ones here and there. Went to Tad, took Cade Brock, gave him a match and a half at the scuffle. He's got a win over Sedarian Perry from Eastern Michigan All-American. There's a lot of tough guys that he's gone toe to toe with and beaten. So I'm glad that he's me back on the mat. And what was that you referred to him as in an interview with Keith?
The Van Wilder of Pitt wrestling.
Yes, because he's been around so long. I used to coach with a local guy here. He was coach at Wissahickon and Pottsgrove, a few other high schools in the area. And Jeff Madden, he's in the Hall of Fame District 1, and he always said he's something to the effect he's always around. He's like mold. He's everywhere. And just seems like he's been around for a while. LJ Bentley at 141, again, looking to, has been solid throughout his career. This year, moving to up to 141, we'll have to see. Last year alone, he was kind of like a little up and down. He was 7-6. He has a 1-0 loss to Darian Cruz. But then, he has some other losses that weren't, that you kind of scratch your head at. That guys that, if he's losing 1-0 to Darian Cruz, he should be, closing the gap on other guys that aren't as tough as Darian Cruz. So, just kind of, you don't know what you're going to get with him. He's kind of a little bit of a, enigma as far as what's gonna come about when he gets to the mat.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's probably at the right weight. Maybe 33 is his optimal weight, but they got Philippi there who's a stud. But I think he could put together a decent year at 141. So jumping ahead, 149. I would guess that they redshirt those young guys coming in, Matthews and. Matthews is the big one. Then Kemmer would be my guess, just off of some things that Coach Gavin said about what they did with their lineup last year. So I would think Robert Lee would be the starter. Lee was a pretty big recruit coming out, 3-time Wisconsin state champ, nationally ranked guy, has not had a lot of success. I think he was 8-12 last year, but when you look over his record, there's a lot of close losses to good guys. 1 point loss to Bo Donahue, 1 point loss to Cortland Schuyler, 2 point loss to Solomon Chisco, 2 point loss to Max Thompson. So he's hanging in there with a lot of these tough guys. Maybe there's something that's going to pop off that's going to help him kind of take that next step and start beating these guys. But certainly, talented guy, just seems to be a couple points off in these matches with a lot of these tougher guys. But maybe he turns it around. Next guy, Taylor Bramani, former ACC champ, 2-time national qualifier. Really, really fun to watch. He has some big wins. He's beaten Josh Shields before. He's beaten Sal Mastriani. Those are a couple of All-Americans right there. Last year, it seemed like his year was a little bit more up and down. But really, for all intents and purposes, wrestled pretty well at the end of the year. He got a pin over Mike D'Angelo at the NCAAs, lost a close one to Hidlay, lost a close one to LaValle, and he lost twice to Hidlay, very close. And he also had a win over Andrew Crone. So, Romani's probably a top 15, top 20 guy on any given day, very funky style. So could certainly catch a guy. But he's a guy that they expect to make big jumps. And then 165, Jake Wenzel, a bit of an up and down season last year. To start the year, I thought he looked really strong. He had Nick Wanzak on the ropes at Southern Scuff, or Cliff Keen, excuse me. I remember watching that match and I was like, wow, Wenzel looks good. And he kind of let it slip away. Wrestled Ashworth from Wyoming really tough. Wrestled Wick tough early in the year. Ultimately did not qualify for the tournament, but he's a tough guy. He's very, very good on the mat. He's a guy I think that they're looking to take that next step and, kind of be a standout on this team. I certainly think that he's capable of that. Joe, what do you think about these guys, the middle of the lineup?
Robert Lee, like you said, you look at his career. He's 11, 16, 13, and 14, and 12. He's a career sub 500 wrestler. He keeps matches close, but for me, the test is at what point are those close losses going to turn into close wins? And one of the things that I really like, and I like about the staff at Pitt, is that the pedigree of winning that they all have. And they're guys that built their careers and their legacies on winning tough matches and grinding things out. And, I think that's something now with them still being new, they're not even 2 years in yet, that they're going to hopefully start to, impose that will upon their team and get them to buy in. So, if Lee can learn how to win those close matches and turn even half those into it, for his senior year, he's going to enjoy some success. Moving on to 57, like you said, Romani, looking over his results, last year he wrestled Hidlay 3 times. He got his doors blown off in a dual meet. And then, I'm sure that staff and I'm sure Romani sat down and thought about, how can we stop Hidlay? We're going to see him again. And they did. They wrestled again at ACCs. And it was a 6-4 sudden victory win for Hidlay. And they wrestled again at NCAAs, and it was a 4-2 win for Hidlay. So you can see right there the growth that he was able to close that gap. He had Joe LaValle losing 6-4 at NCAAs that knocked him out. You talked about the pin that he had. A close match with Kennedy Monday, who ended up, I believe, All-Americaning, being an All-American. But, but then he has some bad losses. Luke Zilverberg from South Dakota State, major decision in him. Just consistency. Consistency is what he needs to exude. He went from being 25-8 and a conference champion to 18-14. And there was no change in weight, nothing. He just needs to find that consistency in his own wrestling. And, Jake Wenzel at 65, again, he's a 500 career wrestler, 500 career record roughly. You come off a 13-13 season. This is the year where I feel like he's got to kind of start creating himself and being a redshirt sophomore on his team. He's no longer a young guy. He's no longer inexperienced. This is the year where he should be, pushing 20 wins and winning those big matches for this Pitt team, who's going to be a year older. We talked about how young the lineup was and how young they still are, but with that youth, there's still a lot of experience in this lineup, top to bottom. So,
yeah, I agree. I know that Coach Gavin, after the Oklahoma win, there was an interview where he basically sat down with the guys and said, are you sick and tired of getting kicked around yet? We're too good for this. We work too hard for it. So that kind of always stuck with me, and I'm wondering if that mentality will just kind of follow them throughout the whole year this year, hopefully. So to their heavy guys, you got Greg Harvey. He's coming down from 184 to 74. Guy that I think is well liked, is a very, very hard worker. Not a blue chip recruit. I think he was a low state place winner. He's a Boyertown guy from your neck of the woods. Was 500 last year. Looks to man the ship at 74 this year. Nino Bonacorsi, I think this is a guy that everyone's really excited to see. I don't know if I could call him a blue chip because he never won a state title, but he's pretty darn good. Flow national champ. He had Taylor Venz on the ropes at U23s in freestyle. He was beating the snot out of him and kind of outshot himself. But Nino he has a gas tank. He can shoot all day. Has wins over Dakota Gear. Plays fourth at the Midlands. He's a guy that I think a lot of people are really, really excited about. 197, Kellen Stout, former Penn State guy, transferred in. 6-16 last year, not the best record, but kind of in the same boat as Lee, where he was losing tons of tiebreakers, won 2-point matches. So, maybe he finds that second gear and kind of switches it around. Nice kid, comes from a good family. So the pedigree's there. I mean, his dad was a 4-time All-American at Clarion. Stout was a very, very good high school wrestler. So we'll see how close he is to knocking down the door. But he'll also be pushed. Cole Nye just transferred in. So there'll be some contention at that weight, I would assume, that those two will take some time to kind of figure it out. And then heavyweight, some exciting news. Another transfer, Demetrius Thomas. He was an NAIA champ, and I think he was second or third last year. He wrestled at Williams Baptist, which was that school was started by Kerry Reitner, who's the head coach at Millersville. Great guy, great coach. Thomas transferred in. He's a bit of a project, but certainly a good wrestler. And, with how wide open heavyweight is, certainly could make some turn some heads this year. Joe, your thoughts on this lineup, the big guys?
Well, yes, Greg Harvey, Boyertown guy. Definitely, I had the opportunity and the privilege to cover him as a high school wrestler, good kid that was a lot of fun. He was in a group of guys, graduated with Jordan Wood from Boyertown, a team that was state runners up in the state duels to Bethlehem Catholic. So I got to know him, followed him through his postseason. He can't grow a mustache too well. But good wrestler. And like you said, come down from 84. I don't know that he belonged there. He was, it didn't suit his body type, and it was heavier than it needed to be. And like we talked about, you said coming off a 14-14 record, wrestling up a weight class. He took some. It was definitely a learning year for him. Another one, you look at the resume of guys that he wrestled. You can go up and down that his results. Drew Phipps, Zach Zavatsky, Chip Ness, Pete Renda, Ryan Price, Chip Ness again, Zavatsky again, Drew Pack. He wrestled you wrestle a lot of tough guys. There's nowhere to hide. I mean, Pitt doesn't wrestle a soft schedule. I think what he's learned in these first 2 years and the amount of matches that he's amassed, I think that this will be a year that he makes that level change, and makes that step in his development to where he establishes himself as the guy at 174, and lays foundation for it being his for like the next two, at least the next season, maybe more. That's probably where he's going to lock in at, with Bonacorsi being a redshirt freshman. There's not a whole lot of room to move. Like, it could be his spot for these next 3 seasons, and he can really make his mark on his career with these next 3 seasons. Bonacorsi is a guy, again, like you said, like he accomplished wrestler, as a true freshman last year, winning 21 matches, wrestling in a lot of opens, and I think that this would be a guy that when the dust settles at the end of the season, he's gonna be a guy that's going to be that guys aren't going to want to run into. He's gonna be a guy that you see him coming up in the bracket, and you're going to be like, oh, it's going to be a tough out, because he's going to give 7 minutes or however long it's going to take and do whatever it takes to win the match. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves on prediction wise, because I'll refrain from that till the end when we talk about it. But Bonacorsi is a guy I'm excited to see get the nod at start at 84. 97 Kellen Stout, Mount Lebanon guy, Rob. Yeah, that's what I thought. Again, you said started at Penn State, hit a wall last year, 6-16. He didn't have a whole lot of success at Penn State. But he's that guy. He gets in a lot of close matches. He's not getting necessarily getting his doors blown off, but he keeps matches close. And it's one of those guys, like I talked about earlier. He's got to find a way to turn those close losses into close wins, or at least limit those close losses. They don't all have to turn and flip the other way. What they need to do is just not be as frequent. And you mentioned pedigree. I just think that another year in that room, that's coaching staff settling in, and that the amount of knowledge and success they have, they're going to be able to bestow it upon these guys. And so I think Stout turns around. I think Stout, when it settles, he'll be back to 500, just above 500 for this season for his junior year. And it's something he can build upon for his senior year. And, Demetrius Thomas, this guy I don't know a whole lot about, but, he's got, he said NAIA champ. He's wrestled a few guys from Division I before. He lost to Mike Boykin, but he got, some wins over Brian Kennerly. He lost to Joey Goodhart from Drexel. And Austin Myers from Missouri has a win over him. He's got the opportunity, because he is, like you said, a project. He's got the opportunity to do some good things, but just one of those guys I want to see on the mat before I can really pass judgment as to what I think they're capable of. That's the wrap for Pitt, Rob. So let me hear your predictions. And just so you guys know, Rob and I don't tell each other what our predictions are. We do converse about things, but these are one of the things that not by design, not like we sat down and said, hey, Rob, I'm not going to tell you what my predictions are because I want you to be surprised. It just doesn't come up in conversation. I think, I like it that way because I want to hear what he has to say, and I want my reaction to be organic as I want his to be when I make my predictions, to see where we're at opinion wise. So, Rob, let's all hear what your predictions are for this Pitt Panthers team in 2018-19.
Yeah, so I'll be somewhat conservative. I'll I'll say 5 national qualifiers. I could see 6 pretty easily. Realistically, I mean, there's a good bit of talent on this team, so even 7 or 8 wouldn't shock me. In terms of All-Americans, I'm going to say Bonacorsi's going to place. I just think he's going to do that, and that's going to help spark the turnaround with this program. Outside of that, I'd say 1.5 is my over-under. I think Mickey Phillippe's a stud, but I think, like I talked about last episode, 133 is really, really tough. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he goes and wins the darn thing. And then you got some other guys, Romani, Wenzel. He's not a qualifier, but I think 65 cleared out a good bit. I'll say 1.5 All-Americans is my prediction. I think they'll end up 3rd in the ACC behind NC State and Virginia Tech. They'll place ahead of Virginia and Duke, and then them and North Carolina will be slugging it out for 3rd and 4th. What about you?
I have to say I'm not a fan of the half All-Americans. I feel that you're taking an easy way out.
It forces you to take 1 or 2.
You're taking the easy way out there, buddy. I'm going to say 2 All-Americans. If I'm going to rank who I think is my confidence pick, I'm not going to say lock. My confidence pick for the first to beat All-American would be Bonacorsi. My next one, I guess you could flip a coin for me. I have the same, I believe, probably faith in either of them. That would be Romani or Phillippi. I'm going to say 2 All-Americans. Not just to disagree with you. I'm going to say they're going to get 2. I joke that it pains me to say nice things about the Pitt wrestling program or Pitt University of Pittsburgh in general, but I do like. I did like the hire of Keith Gavin, and we'll talk. You're gonna hear a lot about that in our interview. I just like what he's doing there. I think he's not sacrificing the future for the present on anything, and I just think that he's taking things. He's got the support of the administration. He's taking things slow, and he's building it the way he wants to. I think this is maybe I'm stretching, but I think maybe it's a natural progression to maybe put 2 guys on the podium this year. And I think as far as NCAA qualifiers go, I could see the only guys that they take the NCAAs are the guys at All-American. I can go the other way, opposite what you said. I think, say Phillippi, Romani, and Bonacorsi possibly being their only qualifiers, and those guys getting onto the podium.
Wenzel and Thomas were my other 2 that I was felt pretty good about, and then the other 5 guys, they're certainly stout. Turn some of those matches around. Harvey at the new weight has a chance. But, yeah, those 5, I like Thomas. I think he's tough. I think he's going to surprise some people.
So you said 3rd in the ACC, and give me a number on where you think they land in the team race NCAAs. I know this is when we get to these like Pitt, Lock Haven, it's a real tough prediction. It's not easy, and I might be putting in a spot here.
Well, with 1 All-American, if Nino places 7th or Mickey places 7th, that puts them outside the top 25. So I'd say somewhere 20 to 30 range. I think they'll be a little bit tougher from a dual perspective. I
agree. I will agree with the tougher from the dual perspective because of the team they have. From tournament's perspective, I'm going to say two All-Americans. I'm going to say they're a top 25 team in the NCAA tournament this year. Cool. I hope so. Our first guest of the podcast is head coach from University of Pittsburgh, Keith Gavin. Keith, welcome to the show. Rob and I are going to, you got a few questions for you. Thanks for coming on, Keith. Really appreciate your time and taking some time out of your busy schedule with everything coming up. So
no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. So Rob's going to get things kicked off here. So Rob, I'm going to refer to you on the first few questions.
Hey, Keith. So obviously you took the job, a year and a half ago or so, and for all intents and purposes, you were somewhat inexperienced from a coaching perspective. I think you coached, 4 or 5 years between Virginia and Oklahoma. What were some of the bigger challenges or things that you learned in your first year as a head coach and really somewhat green to coaching in general compared to some of your colleagues and guys you're coaching against?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, people make a bigger deal out of that than I think needs to be in a lot of ways because of, like, when you're with so when I was with the Ohio State Regional Training Center for a long time before that, and that's like, yeah, sure, you're not a coach per se, but you're in there and it's like, I learned a ton from that experience, you know what I mean? And being obviously going overseas and being on the world team and competing in all those different countries, I mean, those experiences are invaluable. And then like the coaching stuff, I mean, it's recruiting, which is building relationships, and if that's just kind of, you got to know what you have to sell, meaning in your lick. I mean, it's just like you want to keep everybody happy, that's just natural. But at the same time, it's, I don't know. I mean, no matter how much success we have or what we do, there's going to be somebody that's going to be, bitter or feels one way or the other. I mean, I think so far it's been going really well and people have been happy. It's just, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is you got to play the long game, and so you have to, there's some short-term fixes that you kind of have to let go because you're in it for the long run, and if you settle for the short-term fixes, you're going to be inconsistent, and maybe you might do something in the, in the short term to win a few more dual mates, but in the long run it's going to hurt. Like for example, last year, pulling Nino Bonacorsi's red shirt would have been something that we could have done. That would have been a short-term fix. We might have won a few more dual meets, but in the long run, it probably wasn't the best for his development, which in turn wouldn't be the best for our team. You know what I mean? So little things like that you learn, and it's easier said than done to do that. Especially when you're losing, it's like you'll do anything to not lose anymore, but you got to keep your eye on the prize, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I never really thought about that with Nino or, I remember Iowa went through the same thing with Marinelli, right? And that guy wouldn't have won a national title as a true freshman. So what's the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you got to know where your team's at, I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, that happens to the team every year. And I remember, a couple of years ago with Miles Martin at Ohio State, it was like they pulled his red shirt and it worked out great. He won the national, they won the team title. You know what I mean? But they're a team that was competing for a team title. We're a team that's building for the future. So, you got to know what you're trying to do and who you're working with. Yeah.
So Keith, we talked about you talked about like all the time in different rooms and your time at the Ohio State, the Regional Training Center, and like you said, you weren't actually a coach, but you were doing a lot of teaching because that was part of your role. Is there someone or maybe more than one coach that really influenced your I guess your career to and you learned a lot from that you, I don't know, maybe try to emulate or things from their style of coaching that you emulate and bring to your style of coaching?
Yeah, I think, so many different people had an impact on me throughout my career, and it's all in different ways. I mean, when I got to Pitt, I had a really good situation where, I had coaches who cared about me on the Pitt staff, and then I also had, I worked with Sonny Abe one-on-one, and Sonny was a big influence on my technical wrestling, and the attention to detail that I put into it. I mean, he'd make me do something, 100 times, so from a technical standpoint, the way I teach technique, he's a huge influence on me from that, and then I had, like Randy Stoudemire was my head coach, and Randy was known for, how he would treat people and taking care of people and looking at the overall development of the student athlete, so that sticks with you, and that's something that you really learn to appreciate when you're when you're older, when you're my age now, than more so than when you're in college. And then of course, I spent some time with Pat Santoro when I was I trained at Lehigh first for a little while, and Pappy and Pitt alum, we were always pretty close, and he's one of the best guys in the sport, you know, and so you learn a lot from him. You know, my time at Ohio State, I learned a ton about how to build a program. You know, when I got there, they were pretty good, and then, you know, they made some key changes and some key recruiting moves that ended up went from pretty good to winning a national title. You know, I learned how to put together an RTC from being at Ohio State, because you know, when I first got there, we only had one or two guys, and then we ended up having a full. We had, I think, 6 guys, and in 2013 we put 5 of the 6 on the world team that year. You know, so, you know, 2 years later, Ohio State won the national title. So, I mean, yeah, you just kind of, you know, I just paid attention and picked up a lot of things. You know, Lou Roselli was my coach there at Ohio State, and then I worked for Lou at Oklahoma. And, you know, the way that he approaches the work and the consistency of it, I think, you know, I definitely, that stuff rubbed off on me. So, yeah, I think, you know, everybody's probably like that. They have a lot of people who've impacted them throughout their career, and you take a little bit from everybody.
Yeah, you know, definitely. You've had these experiences, and like you said, there's no set amount of time that tells you or that indicates that you're ready to be a head coach. It's, you know, it's more like it's either you're cut out to do it, and it's in your blood, and you're able to do it, or, you know, you're not. And there's like you said, there's no set time or place for it to happen when the opportunity presents itself. One last thing about the whole coaching aspect for this part, when the Pitt job came open, did you know right away that you wanted, that you're going to throw your name in the hat for it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing was a little crazy. I mean, I always wanted to end up at Pitt. Like when I was in coaching, that was like my goal of, you know, I'm gonna. Obviously, I loved at Oklahoma. They were real into wrestling there. It was, you know, a place that I loved who I was working with. I felt like, you know, we're going to be good here, and then so I didn't plan on leaving or anything like that. But I always thought, you know, down the road I was going to try to go back to Pitt, because I love Pittsburgh and I love Pitt. So when it opened up, it was unexpected, you know, and so. You know, I wouldn't say I was planning on it, but obviously I had to give it a shot, you know, because who knows if I didn't and then they hired somebody else, you know, who knows if I'd ever get an opportunity again, you know. So it was, I knew I had to give it a shot, and you know, the way once it started unfolding a little bit, and you know, I knew some key people that helped me and get my foot in the door, and then you know, the rest is history.
Rob, I know you had some questions about change of direction, about you know, some expectations for Keith and his program.
Yeah, so Keith, obviously the ACC's come a long way in the last 10 years. I think 2 out of the last 3 or 2 out of the last 4 teams have brought home a trophy. Virginia Tech and New York, and then NC State last year, which I think ultimately is a good thing for Pitt and good thing for the ACC, obviously. What do you guys have to do in the near and long term to catch those teams and, you know, be the perennial power top of the ACC? I mean, what's, you know, the plan, or what's, I guess, the early and long term steps for that?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. The ACC is very good now, and it's kind of, you know, crazy how fast that's happened. You know, not too long ago the ACC wasn't that good, and now NC State was 4th last year. Virginia Tech's been 4th. I mean, it's a very strong conference, which is good for us, because it's fun. It's fun to be in a good competitive conference, and you get tested before you get to the nationals, and all that goes with it. You know, I think last year they had ACC had the most qualifiers to the nationals they've ever had before, so it's consistently getting better. What do we need to do to get better and you know, compete for ACC title and be a good program? I think we don't focus on other programs so much as we just focus on what we can do, and what we can do is we got to recruit the type of kids that we want to bring into this program. which is high character kids that attack a lot and love to compete, and then once they're here, we focus on developing them. Because no matter how good you are in high school, this is a different level. So everybody's going to need to work on something, and everybody's going to hit bumps in the road, and that's what we're here for, to help them develop and get through that. So it's recruiting the guys the guys that fit our mold, and the guys that we want to bring into this program that fit the culture that we're trying to build, and then once they're here, it's developing them.
So, Rob, you talked about high character kids that want to work, and so you named two characteristics of what you're looking for in a recruit. What are some, those are two, in my opinion, two super important things too. What are some other things you look for? Maybe in the skill set, athletically. Is there anything else that you're like, that this is what you envision a Pitt wrestler having, like tools that they should have in the toolbox when you're recruiting them?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily like technical skills or anything that we're looking for. It's just, I look for kids who love wrestling, because you have to love it, because it's gonna get hard. You're gonna hit, like I said, you're gonna hit bumps on the road. You're gonna meet adversity, and if you love what you do, it's gonna be easier to get through that adversity. And you find that out by the way they compete and the way they train. So when we're watching a kid, I want a kid who's aggressive, who's always looking to score points, because that's the kid who's trying to develop and get better, and not just trying to skate by and get his hand raised. So that's what we're looking for. And then, obviously there can't be any off the mat issues, and that's what I'm talking about with the character stuff, because it's we're just when we're trying to get better and we're trying to catch those programs and win an ACC title and things like that, we're our room for error is pretty slim, so when we bring a guy in here, we gotta make sure that they pan out.
Yeah. So Fargo's coming up. You going?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Coach Headley's going to be out there.
Who's that? I'm sorry.
One of my assistants will be out there.
Okay. And
Drew Headley.
Okay, so Drew's going to be out there. So how important do you think, or how important or how much do you value a wrestler's performance at Fargo compared to, like, in the grand scheme of things, one of maybe the toughest tournament, age appropriate, or toughest tournaments when you factor in both styles? How does that factor into to a guy's a recruit's body of work?
Yeah, well, anytime they compete, we're watching and want to see how they handle it. Anytime you compete, it's we want to watch a guy give his full effort, and compete with good focus, good composure, and good attitude, and when you see that consistently in somebody, it's a safe bet that that's who they are, and that's what's gonna stick with them. So yeah, Fargo's huge. It's a great tournament. Obviously, it's a big national tournament. There's a lot of great tournaments now. When I was in high school, Fargo was the king. Now there's Super 32 and Flow Nationals and all these other ones, and it seems like when I was in high school, everybody went to Fargo from Pennsylvania. Now, I don't know if that's the case anymore. I mean, obviously we got some good guys going out there from our state, and there's going to be good guys from throughout the country, and so it's still a heck of a tournament, and it's definitely still one of the top ones that we watch. But like I said, anytime they compete, we're trying to watch how they approach it and how they handle themselves. So
I'm going to finish up the recruiting aspect of this by my last question being, what sets Pennsylvania kids apart from kids from other states now that you're in the driver's seat, and not that you can't miss on a recruit, but if you're looking at recruits, like what do Pennsylvania kids do consistently better than maybe kids from Ohio, West Virginia, in areas you're probably recruiting in New York and beyond? I mean, I'm sure you don't really have boundaries as far as where you're looking to get kids that are going to come into your program and be contributors and All-Americans and national champions. But we're three Pennsylvania guys right here, and there's probably a slight bias, maybe, but I think maybe of the three of us right now, you're going to have the be able to maybe take the glasses off, as I like to say, and you maybe give us some more insight. But Pennsylvania traditionally, as we all know, very strong wrestling. What sets the Pennsylvania kid apart?
Well, I mean, first let me say that, you know, a lot of states have good wrestlers, and you know, obviously like Ohio is very strong and PA strong, but you're seeing now more than ever. I mean, kids from everywhere are good, you know, and that's so it doesn't really matter where they're from as long as they have that competitive mindset and like I was saying before, always looking to attack, always looking to score. You know, the growth mindset, you know, the kids that are going to keep getting better is what we're looking for. And that can really happen anywhere. We've seen it happen all over the place now. But in Pennsylvania in particular, I think with our state, we have a lot of depth, you know, and that's something that sets us apart maybe, you know, and here is that, you know, the kid who gets fourth place at the state tournament might be a stud, you know. I mean, myself, I never won a state title in PA, you know, was third in double A, and then obviously I had to get a lot better in college, but you know, maybe somewhere else that depth isn't the same as PA, and so I think that just comes from, you know, we have very good clubs in Pennsylvania. You know, the club scene here is top notch, you know, and it's getting that way in a lot of different areas. In particular, like Illinois has been really strong, you know, and a lot of that I think is because they have some really good clubs there, you know, and these kids are training a lot with high level coaches. You know, there's high level coaches that have know what they're talking about, you know, teaching these kids from a young age. So I think you're seeing that happen all over the country. It just might have happened earlier in PA.
So you kind of answered one of the last two questions I had, was what makes a good college wrestler, and you know, through your answers before, you've kind of answered that. So I'm gonna go on I got one more question for you, and then I'm gonna throw it over to Rob to finish up here. But just kind of changing gears, just again this you know, talking about Keith Gavin, the wrestler, a little bit, and giving some so people can get a little bit insight about you. In your career, you had a very successful collegiate career. You know, for all intents and purposes, in your college career, who was the toughest guy you wrestled? You know, gave you fits, you know, for whatever reason, and you know, why was he your toughest opponent? I don't know. You know, that's tough to answer because I wasn't like, you know, like my first couple of years, I wasn't that good per se. You know, I mean, I was still growing as a wrestler. So, like, for example, like my first ever college dual meet, I was a true freshman. I wrestled Troy Letters at Lehigh and crushed me. You know, and it was like, but I don't even, you know, I mean, that was probably one of the worst losses I've had in college. But, you know, I don't even, unless somebody asked me about that, I don't even remember it because I wiped those first 2 years of college out of my mind because I wasn't any good, you know. So, you know, like I was saying, that was when I was still growing and getting better. But so, like, you know, disregarding those first couple of years, I mean, when I felt like I was pretty good, or, you know, I mean, at least being, you know, All-American ready, you know, probably Ben Askren was probably the toughest guy I wrestled, and it was really because, like, I wrestled him a few times, and I knew, like, I felt really good on my feet when I wrestled. You know, I felt like I can control him and take him down, but he was very mentally tough, and I learned a lot from wrestling with him, and then he was a year older than me, so afterwards we ended up training together for a little while, and we became good friends. He's a great guy, but anyways, I learned a lot from wrestling him in college, just on, you know, the mental side of things, and how he like, for instance, in our junior year in the finals, it was, you know, the match was going my way in a lot of ways, and he was a heavy favorite, you know, but he stayed the course and ended up beating me, and it was kind of a lesson in, you know, I didn't really think I expected to win until maybe the third period, when it's like, oh, I could win this one, you know, and then he just kind of stayed the course, where I was kind of up and down, you know, and not riding that emotional roller coaster. So, you know, I think that he was probably the best competitor I wrestled in college, just from a mental standpoint. And, you know, like I said, I learned a lot from that. All right, so Rob, we're gonna, you know, I'm gonna throw it back over to you here, and you can, you know, finish up your last question here with Keith. We don't want to keep him too long. Like I said, we do appreciate the time you're giving us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so last question to all the blue chips out there listening to this, and some of them may or may not have committed to Pitt verbally, but for those other guys you're chasing down, what's your pitch? And I don't want you to give away too much because I know there's probably some secrets, but how do you draw someone in? Why would a blue chip want to come and wrestle at Pitt?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Pitt is a great place to be all around. Academically, it's the number one school in the Northeast, the number one public school in the Northeast. So it's great academics. You could really do both here. Where a lot of places might be tough to succeed academically and athletically, but at Pitt you could really do both. So we really feel like it's the best of both worlds from that standpoint. But and other than that, I think it's fun to be part of something that people believe is going to get is on the rise. And that we're getting better and we're going in the right direction. And Pitt's had guys do well before. Yeah, sure, I won at Pitt, but Tyler Wilkes a couple of years ago was in the national finals. And really. Should have won that match and been national champion. But, so we had, Tyler, who was, I think he was fifth in the state, was his best finish. And he's up on, getting in the national finals. And we've had multiple All-Americans. So we've had multiple national champions at Pitt. So it's been proven that you can win here. Now all we're trying to do is do it consistently so that we have numerous guys on our team winning here. And like I said earlier, the way we do that is we bring in the guys that we want that fit our mold, and then we pour a lot of time into them and develop them. And that's what we tell these kids in the recruiting process, is that we're a young staff that has a lot of energy, and we're very hungry to try to get this program to where we think it can go. And we're going to pour a ton of time into the guys that we have. We're going to put a lot of attention into them and make sure that we do everything we can to help them reach their goal. And you can't guarantee anybody that they're going to be national champ. I mean, things happen, injuries, things like that, but I can guarantee them that we're going to give them everything they need. It's not going to be because of lack of effort on our end. So that's what we tell these guys, and we think that it's a special place. And our new administration is doing some special things here, and the whole athletic department is got a lot of positive momentum right now.
One more question. I forgot to ask this earlier, but this season's outlook, just kind of talking about that, future national champs, building guys up. I mean, who should we be looking out for coming out this year?
We got a young team, so I'm as interested as anybody to see who's gonna. Young guys tend to, get better quicker because they're growing, and by the time you're 50 or senior, you kind of are who you are. But yeah, I'm excited for a lot of these guys. So we got a lot of young guys on the team. I mean, two obvious ones coming off redshirt. Nino Bonacorsi, who had a great redshirt year last year and put in a good summer, and Mickey Philippi, who's in a red shirt, and he also had a very good year. So both those guys will be in the lineup next year, and we're excited for them to see what they can do. But like I said, I mean, top to bottom, we're pretty young. I think we only have 3 seniors on the whole team, in our whole 30-man roster. So we got some kids that are doing the right things, and we're looking to see. We're all excited about who's going to step up and make a name for themselves next year.
Do you consider Philippi, the Van Wilder Pitt Wrestling, as a young guy, or just young with old with a lot of eligibility?
Yeah, he's still young. He's certainly still young, but he's got 4 years left for us, so that's gonna be fun. Mickey, he works very hard, and he's a great kid. Everybody loves him, and I think we want to see him do well because he's on our team, but also, I've known him for a long time, and I care a lot about him, as I do with a lot of these guys on our team. So, there's really no better feeling than seeing the guys on your team overcome things and succeed. So, yeah, we're hoping that Mickey has a great year this year, and he's been working hard, and so is the rest of the team this summer. So we're hoping that a number of guys have a good year.
Well, Keith,
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, and we really appreciate the time you gave us here tonight. Won't keep any longer.
No
really,
problem.
Really want to wish you the best of luck from PA Power Wrestling in this upcoming season as you continue to build the Pitt program and build it back up. And, that's, like I said, coming from West Virginia alumni. I'm sincere in saying that. I do want to see you do well. I think it's good for the rivalry. It's good for college wrestling. Like, it's good when all these Pennsylvania teams are doing well, and we saw with obviously Penn State's doing their thing, but the upswing of all these schools in Pennsylvania are getting are keeping the talent home, and you're definitely a testament to that. So wish you nothing but the best to continue to develop Pitt and build that program and provide opportunities for all kids, not just Pennsylvania guys. So best of luck. Can't say it enough.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's what we got for this week. We're trying to be short, but Rob, we still end up going a little bit longer than we thought. Rob's going to talk a minute about the Surge, which is PA Power Wrestling sponsoring this fall.
Yeah, so the Surge, guys, a nice preseason tournament that is being hosted at the University of Pittsburgh, Johnstown. Nice facility that they have there. It is, I think, the first week of November. Let me pull up the dates real quick.
You're right. I believe it's the 3rd and 4th of November.
Yep, 3rd and 4th, Saturday, Sunday. Check out the website. Pre-registration is already up on Flow, so you'll be able to see who's all there and who's showing up. It's supposed to be just a straw poll. Coaches I'm talking to, apparently there's going to be a lot of studs there, so definitely want to get there and check out some of the competition before the season starts.
Yeah, definitely take advantage of it. The amount of preseason tournaments that are out there to get looks and things like that. These are tournaments, Fargo this weekend, Super 32, Flow National, all these tournaments where it's out of the season. There are easy ways to get looks from college coaches because if they're not in season, they have the ability to get out and see you wrestle. So, for you high school aged wrestlers or parents listening, these are opportunities to get your son looks from college coaches at some of these tournaments, and the Surge is right there with them. And it's preseason tournaments, within a month of the season starting. So you guys that are working towards that season, it's a good way to kind of shake a little bit of the rust off before the grind really starts. Yeah, absolutely. And then next episode we will look at Drexel and Edinboro if we do another 2-teamer. A lot going on with Edinboro, so certainly we'll want to hear about that and I guess discuss what their future looks like. And speak of a lot going on for Edinboro, a lot of change. Definitely a lot of change going on at Drexel too. I mean, it's in my backyard, and a lot of buzz in Drexel going on about Drexel wrestling, and I'm looking forward to talking about. So we're gonna cut it off there. Thanks for tuning in. Got, like I said, good feedback from the first one. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with anything, questions you want answered, refute anything that we said. Tell us we don't know what we're talking about. It's fine. Anything, any feedback's good feedback. And then, sign off here. This was the Open Room with Joe Youngblood and Rob Waltko. Thanks and take care. Have a great couple weeks, and we'll be back soon with some more wrestling.